In this interlude, we glimpse the profound psychology at play. Elvis, by foregoing violence for vulnerability, transformed potential tragedy into a cathartic ritual. The audience witnesses to this unfolding drama felt the emotional pull, their hearts sinking with the narrative of redemption. As the band paused, the silence was pregnant with possibility, a canvas upon which the human spirit would paint its masterpiece. This was Elvis at his coronet, the entertainer, but the enlightened one, using his platform to heal the fractures of a divided world, to understand the tempest that erupted on that stage. One must descend into the shadowed valleys of Bobby "Big Mike" Henderson's life, a narrative woven from the threads of unyielding labor, shattered dreams, and the numbing embrace of alcohol. Born in the dusty outskirts of Phoenix in 1941, Big Mike embodied the archetype of the American working man, broad-shouldered, calloused hands forged in the fires of construction sites, where the sun beat down mercilessly and the pay barely kept the wolves from the door. At 35, he was a husband, a father figure to 2 young children, and a pillar in his community. Yet beneath this facade lurked a man eroded by circumstance. Psychologically, Big Mike was a powder keg of repressed anguish. The loss of his job mere weeks prior had stripped him of his identity, leaving him adrift in a sea of inadequacy. His wife's departure, a culmination of mounting tensions, had deepened the chasm, transforming their home into an echoing void. That day in November, Big Mike sought escape in the bottle. Starting at noon in a dimly lit bar near the Strip, whiskey after whiskey, the liquid courage swelled within him, amplifying his grievances into a crusade against the symbols of unattainable success. Elvis Presley, the king, represented everything Big Mike felt he could never be: adored, wealthy, immortal. In his alcohol-hazed mind, confronting the icon was a bid for validation, a desperate grasp at reclaiming agency in a life spiraling into oblivion. He purchased a ticket to the show, not for enjoyment, but as a battlefield, his heart pounding with a toxic mix of envy and self-loathing. As he took his seat amid the throng, the grandeur of the event only heightened his isolation, the cheers around him a mocking chorus to his inner turmoil. When the moment arrived, Big Mike's shout was the release of pent-up fury, a primal scream echoing the psychological fractures within. "Elvis, you ain't nothing but a fake." The words, slurred yet sharp, cut through the din, drawing all eyes to him. The crowd's initial shock gave way to boos, but Big Mike pressed on, his challenge a manifestation of deeper wounds. "Come down here and prove you're a real man." In that instant, he was every man who had ever felt invisible, his aggression a shield against the vulnerability of his broken dreams. Security's approach only fueled his defiance, but Elvis's intervention.com inviting disarmed him, piercing the armor of his intoxication. Ascending the stage, Big Mike's steps were unsteady, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and lingering rage. The microphone in his hand felt foreign, a tool of expression he had never wielded in such a forum. Psychologically, this was a pivotal rupture. The expectation of physical confrontation dissolved into something profoundly disorienting, an invitation to create rather than destroy. Elvis's eyes, those piercing blue orbs that had captivated millions, met his with a gaze of understanding, stripping away layers of pretense. "We're going to have ourselves a singing contest," Elvis declared, his voice a soothing anchor in the storm. Big Mike's resistance faltered. "I don't want to sing with you. I want to fight you. Yet, the king's insistence, this is my stage. These are my people, and we do things my way here. You want to prove you're tougher than me? Then prove you can do what I do." Sing coerced a reluctant compliance as Big Mike chose my way. The Frank Sinatra anthem of solitary triumph. The irony was poignant. His voice, gravelly and off-key, cracked under the strain, words tumbling out in fragmented bursts. He swayed, nearly toppling, steadied by Charlie Hodges' discreet hand. The audience, expecting ridicule, instead erupted in cheers not for perfection, but for the raw courage of a man bearing his soul. In this act, Big Mike's psychological barriers crumbled. The vulnerability of performance mirrored his life's exposures, transforming humiliation into a bridge of empathy. Elvis clapped, whispered forgotten lyrics, his support a lifeline pulling Big Mike from the abyss. The ovation that followed was thunderous, a collective affirmation that healed in its universality. This moment revealed the depths of Big Mike's psyche, a man whose aggression masked profound loneliness, now glimpsing redemption through artistic vulnerability. The stage, once a symbol of division, became a sanctuary of shared humanity. The arena pulsed with suspended animation as Big Mike gripped the microphone, his knuckles whitening against the cold metal, a lifeline in the maelstrom of his unraveling composure. Elvis stood mere feet away, his presence a towering yet gentle force. The psychological interplay between them as intricate as a chess match played on the edge of a precipice. The crowd, a vast organism of held breaths, watched in rapt fascination, their emotions mirroring the heckler's, turmoil, pity mingling with awe, tension coiling tighter with each passing second. This was no ordinary interruption. It was a collision of worlds, where the fragility of one man's spirit began haltingly. His voice, a ragged baritone that clashed against the song's defiant elegance. "And now, the end is near," he croaked, the words laden with unintended prophecy, his eyes darting nervously to the sea of faces below. Forgetting lines, he improvised with slurred ferocity, his body swaying like a tree in a gale. The off-key notes pierced the air, yet there was no derision from the audience. Instead, a murmur of encouragement swelled, fans clapping in rhythm, their empathy awakened by the sight of raw, unpolished humanity. Psychologically, this was catharsis in motion. Big Mike, stripped of his bravado, confronted his inadequacies head-on, the stage amplifying his inner echoes of failure. Elvis, sensing the man's teetering edge, interjected softly, feeding him the next verse. "I've lived a life. I traveled each and every highway." His guidance was not patronizing, but fraternal, a subtle affirmation that bridged their chasm as the song faltered to its close. Big Mike's chest heaved, tears glistening in his eyes, the emotional dam breaking under the weight of unexpected grace. The applause crashed like waves, a standing ovation that enveloped him, not for talent, but for the sheer audacity of vulnerability. Elvis's smile returned, genuine and warm, as he placed a hand on Big Mike's shoulder. "That was beautiful, Mike," he said, his voice carrying the timbre of sincere admiration. "That took real courage." In this exchange, we witnessed the psychological alchemy of Elvis's character by validating the effort over the execution. He dismantled the heckler's defenses, fostering a connection that transcended the superficial. Yet the night was far from resolved. Elvis, ever the architect of emotional narratives, seized the moment to weave them into a tapestry of unity. "Now, let's do something together," he announced, signaling the band to strike up the gentle chords of "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands," a gospel staple from his Sun Records days. Infused with the spiritual depth that had always anchored his soul, the audience, sensing the shift, joined in hesitantly at first, then with fervor, their voices rising in harmonious waves. Big Mike, microphone still in hand, was drawn into the harmony, his rough timbre blending awkwardly yet poignantly with Elvis's silken tenor. "He's got the whole world in his hands," they sang, the lyrics a balm for the soul, evoking themes of divine oversight and communal solace. Psychologically, this duet was transformative. For Big Mike, it was a surrender to collective healing, his isolation dissolving in the shared refrain. For the crowd, it was an immersive ritual, pulling them from spectatorship into participation, their hearts swelling with the realization of interconnectedness. Elvis's eyes scanned the arena, connecting with individuals in the throng, his performance a psychological anchor amid the chaos. As the song swelled to its crescendo, the emotional intensity peaked. Tears streamed down faces in the audience, the stunned silence of earlier giving way to a profound, unifying joy in this pivotal act. Elvis revealed his mastery of the human psyche by channeling conflict into creation. He not only diffused the threat but elevated it to a moment of enlightenment. The 20,000 souls bore witness to a miracle of empathy, their stun rooted in the unexpected depth of compassion from a man they idolized as untouchable. With the final notes of "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands" fading into a reverent hush, the stage became a confessional, bathed in the soft afterglow of spotlights that seemed to illuminate not just bodies, but souls laid bare. Elvis turned to Big Mike, his expression a mosaic of concern and wisdom, the psychological insight of a man who had traversed the valleys of despair himself, now guiding the moment. "What made you so angry tonight?" he asked, his voice low and intimate, cutting through the residual echoes of song like a surgeon's scalpel. The question hung an invitation to vulnerability that pierced Big Mike's armored heart, compelling him to confront the shadows he had long evaded. Tears welled in Big Mike's eyes, his broad frame trembling as the alcohol's haze lifted under the weight of genuine inquiry. I lost my job last month," he stammered, the words tumbling out like confessions long suppressed. "Construction dried up, and my wife, she left me, took the kids. I wanted someone to pay attention to me. I wanted to matter." The arena, still as a cathedral, absorbed his admission, the crowd's collective empathy manifesting in a soft, supportive murmur. Psychologically, this was the crux of redemption. Big Mike's outburst, born of profound loss and isolation, found voice not in rage but in raw honesty. Elvis, drawing from his own well of personal trials, the deaths of loved ones, the betrayals of fame, nodded solemnly, his arm encircling the man's shoulders in a gesture of unyielding solidarity. "Brother, you matter," Elvis replied, his tone infused with the fervor of a preacher, eyes locking onto Big Mike's with unwavering conviction. "You matter to me, and you matter to every person in this room. We all have times when we feel lost and alone, when the world seems to turn its back. But tearing others down won't build you up. We can find better ways together. The words resonated like gospel truth, striking at the core of universal human frailty. The audience, moved to tears, erupted in applause once more, their stun evolving from shock to profound inspiration. In this exchange, Elvis orchestrated a psychological symphony by mirroring Big Mike's pain with his own implicit understanding. He fostered a bond that healed both participants and observers alike. Addressing the throng, Elvis elevated the moment further. It wasn't Mike coming up here to cause trouble, he proclaimed, his voice rising with passion. It was Mike standing in front of all of you and admitting when he was hurting. That takes more guts than any fight ever could. The crowd's ovation thundered, a wave of affirmation washing over the stage. Yet Elvis, ever proactive in his compassion, turned the narrative outward. Now, folks, this man needs a hand, not just applause, but real help. Does anyone here own a construction company? Need a hard worker who's got heart? Hands shot up from the audience. 3 offers materializing in the aftermath, lifelines extended from strangers moved by the display. For Big Mike, this was rebirth. The psychological shift from antagonist to beneficiary dismantled years of self-doubt, igniting a spark of hope. He hugged Elvis tightly, whispering thanks through sobs, the embrace a symbol of reconciled opposites. The king, in turn, felt the reciprocal healing affirmation that his influence extended beyond entertainment to tangible transformation. As security finally escorted Big Mike backstage for water and solace, the show resumed. But the evening's essence had irrevocably changed. The 20,000 witnesses carried away not just memories of songs, but a lesson in empathy's power. Their emotions stirred to depths unforeseen. This turning point encapsulated Elvis's legacy, a man whose psychological acuity turned potential violence into a beacon of unity, stunning the world with the quiet strength of kindness in the quiet aftermath of that electrifying night. As the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed into the neon-veiled streets of Las Vegas, the true ripples of the encounter began to unfold, etching an indelible mark on lives and legacies alike. Big Mike, fortified by the unexpected grace, accepted one of the job offers, a position with a local firm that valued his resilience over his rough edges. Over the ensuing 15 years, he rebuilt his existence brick by brick, metaphorically mirroring the constructions of his trade. He reconciled with his family, his children witnessing a father reborn, and often recounted the story to them not as humiliation, but as a pivotal awakening. He could have made me a fool in front of thousands, Big Mike would say in later interviews, his voice steady with gratitude. But instead, he gave me a reason to stand tall again. Psychologically, this transformation was profound. The stage incident served as a catalyst, shattering the cycle of self-destruction and paving a path toward self-worth, a testament to how a single act of empathy can realign a fractured psyche. For Elvis, the event was a bittersweet affirmation amid his own gathering storms. In the privacy of his suite, he reflected with aides on the night's magic, the encounter reaffirming his belief in the redemptive power of connection. Yet, it also underscored his vulnerabilities, the toll of constant exposure, the emotional labor of being a beacon for the broken. Bootleg recordings of the moment circulated among fans, preserving the raw authenticity that official releases often polished away. Local newspapers hailed it with headlines like, "Elvis turns anger into applause," capturing the stunned reverence of the 20,000 who had borne witness. The story spread beyond Vegas, inspiring performers to handle disruptions with compassion and even influencing conflict resolution seminars, where Elvis's approach was dissected as a model of emotional intelligence. Psychologically, the legacy lies in its universal resonance, a narrative of how vulnerability, when met with understanding, forges unbreakable bonds. Big Mike's life, extended by a decade of purpose, ended peacefully in 1991, but not before he became a quiet advocate for those struggling with addiction and loss, crediting Elvis as the turning point for the king, whose own health waned in the years following. This incident stood as a pinnacle of his humanistic ethos, a reminder that fame's true value lay in touching lives, not amassing accolades. Fans, reflecting on it decades later, speak of it as a hidden gem in his canon, a story that humanizes the myth, revealing the man behind the legend in the grand tapestry of Elvis Presley's untold stories. This encounter shines as a jewel of emotional depth, a dramatic revelation of the heart's capacity for healing. It stunned not just an arena, but generations, proving that in moments of crisis, true kingship is measured by mercy. The echoes of that night linger, a timeless lesson in the psychology of compassion, inviting us to look beyond the spotlight to the souls it illuminates. In the heart of the neon-lit desert, the Las Vegas Hilton erupted into chaos. A single voice, slurred and defiant, pierced the electric symphony of 20,000 souls. "Elvis, you ain't nothing but a fake." The king of rock and roll froze mid-stride, his white jeweled jumpsuit catching the spotlight like a fallen angel's armor, as the crowd's roar twisted into a gasp of stunned silence. What happened next would etch itself into the annals of human vulnerability, a moment where fury met grace, and a man's broken spirit found redemption on the grandest stage imaginable. November 14th, 1976. The air in the International Theater hung heavy with the scent of cigarette smoke and anticipation, a palpable fog that mirrored the haze in Elvis Presley's own soul. At 41, the man who had once shaken the foundations of a conservative America with his hips and his heart was now a titan ensnared in his own legend. His Las Vegas residencies had become ritualistic spectacles, drawing pilgrims from every corner of the globe to witness the eternal flame that was Elvis Aaron Presley. Yet beneath the sequins and the spotlight, cracks were forming, whispers of prescription pills, the weight of unrelenting fame, and a profound loneliness that echoed through the empty corridors of his suite after the applause faded. Psychologically, Elvis was a fortress under siege. The boy from Tupelo, who had risen from poverty through sheer raw talent, now grappled with the isolation of godhood. He performed not just for the adulation, but for the fleeting connection it promised, a balm for the wounds of a life lived in the public eye. That night, the show had begun with the familiar fire. Elvis, sweat glistening on his brow, had just belted out the final notes of Burning Love, his voice a thunderclap that ignited the audience into frenzy. The transition to hound dog was seamless, his body moving with that inimitable grace, a blend of southern swagger and spiritual The crowd, housewives from Ohio, executives from New York, dreamers from distant lands, hung on his every gesture, their cheers a collective heartbeat. But then, from the middle section, rose the voice of discord. Bobby Big Mike Henderson, a 35-year-old construction worker from Phoenix, Arizona, had imbibed far too much whiskey since noon. His interruption was no mere outburst. It was the eruption of a volcano long dormant, fueled by personal devastation that had left him adrift in a sea of despair. Big Mike's challenge hung in the air like a thunderhead. You think you're so tough with your fancy clothes and your singing. Why don't you come down here and prove you're a real man? The words sliced through the music, halting the band in mid. Security guards tensed, their hands inching toward the intruder. But Elvis raised a palm, his eyes locking onto the man below. In that instant, the arena held its breath, the psychological tension coiling like a spring. Would the king unleash his entourage to silence the fool, or would he descend into the fray himself? The mystery deepened, pulling every soul into the vortex of uncertainty, where emotion and fate collided as we delve into this untold chapter of Elvis's life. A story buried in the shadows of bootleg tapes and faded memories. Remember that true legends are forged not in triumph alone, but in the raw forge of human frailty. If this glimpse into the hidden heart of the king stirs something within you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe for more revelations from the untold stories of Elvis, and share it with those who seek the deeper truths behind the icons. For in sharing, we keep these moments alive, echoing through time. Elvis's jaw tightened, the smile vanishing from his lips, replaced by a steely resolve that betrayed the storm within. He had faced adoring fans and jealous rivals, but this was a mirror held up to his own vulnerabilities. Big Mike, swaying unsteadily, represented not just a heckler, but the underbelly of America's working man, embittered by life's cruelties. Elvis stepped to the edge of the stage, his voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of empathy that only those closest to him would recognize. "Well, hello there, friend," he began, his tone a masterful blend of southern charm and quiet authority. "Looks like we got ourselves a music critic in the house tonight." Laughter rippled through the crowd, a tentative release of tension, but Big Mike was unrelenting, his alcohol-fueled rage pushing him further. "Don't you friend me, boy. I'm talking to you. I want to see if you're anything more than a mama's boy who shakes his hips for teenage girls." For Elvis, this was no abstract threat. It tapped into his deepest insecurities, the fear that his image was all facade, that beneath the charisma lay a man unworthy of the pedestal. Yet, in that crucible, his character shone. Instead of retaliation, he extended an invitation that would redefine the night. "You want to know if I'm a real man? You think I'm just some pretty boy who can't handle himself? Well, friend, I tell you what." "Gentlemen," the crowd murmured in disbelief as security hesitated. But Elvis waved them off, his eyes never leaving Big Mike's. The man stumbled forward, climbing the steps with the awkward determination of the inebriated, his face a mask of bravado, hiding profound pain. As Big Mike reached the stage, the spotlight bathed them both in an otherworldly glow. Two souls from disparate worlds, now bound in confrontation. Elvis handed him a microphone, his touch gentle, almost paternal. The air crackled with possibility. What would the king do next? In this suspended moment, we see the essence of Elvis, not the rock star, but the healer, the empath, who understood the fragility of the human spirit. The story unfolds, layer by layer, revealing how one act of compassion could stun an arena and touch eternity. The year 1976 marked a pivotal crossroads in Elvis Presley's odyssey, a time when the echoes of his youthful rebellion clashed against the relentless tide of maturity and mortality. Las Vegas, that glittering mirage in the Nevada desert, had become his Colosseum, a place where he reigned supreme yet felt the chains of expectation tightening around his neck. His residencies at the Hilton were marathons of endurance, multiple shows per night. Week after week, each performance, a Herculean effort to summon the fire that had once come so naturally. Psychologically, Elvis was navigating a labyrinth of self-doubt. The prescriptions that once eased his pains now clouded his clarity, and the adulation of millions often felt like a hollow echo in the chambers of his heart. He confided to close friends like Charlie Hodge, his trusted guitarist, that the stage was both salvation and prison, a space where he could connect with the masses yet remain profoundly alone. That fateful evening, the theater was a sea of fervor. The 20,000 attendees, a tapestry of humanity drawn by the magnetic pull of the king. Families clutched tickets passed down like heirlooms. Couples swayed in the dim light, and lone souls sought solace in the promise of transcendence. Elvis emerged from the wings with the poise of a gladiator, his voice igniting also Sprach Zarathustra into a symphonic prelude, followed by the raw energy of C.C. Ryder. His movements were poetry in motion, hips swiveling with that signature sensuality, eyes scanning the crowd for the spark of genuine connection. Yet, beneath it all, a weariness lingered. Reports from those nights speak of moments when his gaze would drift, as if searching for something lost in the haze of fame. Big Mike's interruption shattered this fragile equilibrium. As Elvis launched into burning love, the song's passionate plea, "Lord Almighty, pick me up and turn me around," seemed almost prophetic. The heckler's voice boomed from the shadows, a guttural challenge that halted the rhythm like a skipped heartbeat. "Elvis, you ain't nothing but a fake." The words landed like blows, stirring a ripple of unease through the audience. Some fans bristled in defense, their loyalty a fierce shield, while others held their breath, sensing the volatility of the moment. Security, trained for such disruptions, moved swiftly, but Elvis's command stayed their hands. In his mind, this was not mere disruption. It was an opportunity for revelation, a chance to pierce the veil of performance and touch the raw nerve of authenticity psychologically. Elvis's response was a masterstroke of emotional intelligence. He had long been attuned to the undercurrents of human suffering, shaped by his own rises and falls, from the poverty of Mississippi shacks to the opulence of Graceland. Inviting Big Mike on stage was an act of radical vulnerability, a decision born from the depths of his empathetic soul. As the man ascended, the crowd's murmurs swelled into a symphony of anticipation and apprehension. Elvis, ever the performer, masked his inner turmoil with a veneer of calm. But those who knew him saw the flicker, the subtle tightening of his features, the weight of responsibility pressing upon him. standing face to face. The contrast was stark. Elvis, the icon, in resplendent attire, and Big Mike, disheveled and defiant, a symbol of the everyman's rage against the elite. "You want to prove something," Elvis said, his voice resonant with quiet power. "Let's prove it. But we're not going to fight like animals. We're going to settle this the way real men settle things." The proposal hung in the era singing contest. Gasps echoed through the hall. This was no scripted drama, but an improvisation of the soul. Big Mike, caught off guard, clutched the microphone like a weapon, his bravado cracking under the weight of the unexpected mercy.